Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be open about your story because it's not the easiest thing to do to just tell the world what's going on in your mind. So, what was it about this that made you want to share?
I think I've always kind of been a really open book when it comes to my mental health and talking about it, because my mom's always been one of those people who, has been really open about her story and taught us that healing comes through vulnerability. So being able to share my story is healing in my own way, and then hopefully helping someone else heal on their journey.
I love that. I think a lot of people used to think vulnerability was this weakness, but really it's one of the strongest things you can do to really be open and let people in because it's scary. But speaking of your story, where do you want to start? Tell us what this year has brought you. I know you've got some really exciting news coming up, and I think you're a superhero for what you're doing. So let's get into all of that.
Thanks. Yeah, this year has been insane to say the least. Late last year, I decided that I've always wanted to foster and eventually adopt. I have siblings who are from being adopted, and I have uncles who my grandmother adopted. So it's always just been kind of something I knew I was going to do. And the end of last year, I kind of realized, like, what am I waiting for exactly? And I really I'm a kind of spiritual person. I really prayed and meditated on it and felt like this was the year that I was supposed to do it. And so I started getting ready last year with therapy. And then this year I applied to become a foster parent. And now I'm like a week out from being officially done with the application and everything. So it's been really wild. I've learned so much about myself and getting ready to become a mom, and it's been awesome so far.
And it's almost interesting that you say this year felt right because so many people are terrified of everything we've seen this year. And you're like, let me take this new responsibility on, which is a big responsibility. But if you don't mind explaining a little bit, how does it really work when you foster versus adopting? And then what if you did want to adopt? What does that look like?
Right. So the main goal in fostering is reunification. You want these kids to be with their family because just from a mental and emotional standpoint, having to start anew and make new connections with someone else is really hard on a child's development. So when you're going into fostering, you are preparing yourself to get your heart broken because you're supposed to love these kids like they're your own, but you're also supposed to be mentally prepared for the fact that they might not stay with you forever. You might have them for a month, you might have them for 5 years, you might have them for 10 years. But at any given point, if their parents or family members do what they need to do to get them back, then you have to kind of go with it. And that's the goal. You want a family to get to stay together. And I think I've learned through fostering that not all people who lose their children are monsters, because I think that's a common misconception. And going through this process, I've learned there's a lot of factors that play into it. But as far as adopting, sometimes there's situations where this isn't the first child parents have lost, or parents aren't willing to do or can't do what they're being required, and there's not someone else to step up. And so in that case, I would be given the option to adopt, and that's definitely something I want to do. I've always wanted to be a mom. So
that's what I was wondering. I was thinking fostering, if they do, I was like, do they go back to the foster home? Is there some timeline? But that's really great to know that the idea is to hopefully put them back with parents that are able to take them. And I know that's got to be so hard, but I would really hope that the parents would be open to you basically being a second mother in their life at that point, and that you would still be able to hold that connection, because that's not easy to really mold a person's life and then say goodbye. So I think you have such a huge heart for doing that, not only taking on the responsibility, but just all that it comes with. And I think you already said you're learning about yourself. It'll be really cool to see what more you figure out, especially in the world today. You've always been so strong and outspoken about how you feel about things, and not always, the most popular opinion, but you say what is on your heart. And I think that's really cool of you to do. And it's, the internet can be mean. I don't know if you've had any people attack you for anything you said, but people say anything and everything these days. So in this kind of world, being a badass female outspoken woman, what do you want to teach do you know if you're having one or two, or do we know yet?
I have no idea what's coming through. But what I want to teach them, honestly, more than anything, is I think just empathy. I don't think we have enough empathy in the world, especially now with social media. It's so easy to just like get on, say something horrible and jump off and it not affect you at all because like it's no longer connected to you. It's so easy to put negativity out into the world. And I think empathy is something that doesn't only help other people, it helps yourself. I think it feels really good to be kind to people and understand where they're coming from and feel for their stories. And yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing I want to teach them is just, you know, people have baggage and you gotta respect that.
Absolutely. And do you think that, because it is a whole journey just figuring out what works for us alone, so do you find it might be harder to keep that focus on you, or do you think having an addition of a child in your life is only going to grow that love and just understanding of what makes you happy?
I think yeah, I think it's something that I was really determined to make sure I was good to go before I stepped into this. I think a lot of time with parenthood, people don't reflect on their own trauma or how they were raised and the things that they want to continue on from their ancestry, the generational curses that they want to break. And for me, because this isn't as simple as you know, getting pregnant or whatever. Not that pregnancy is simple, but it's something that's like it's something that there's so many more steps to in order to become a parent in a situation. I really sat there and thought like, okay, what areas of my life do I need to work on, like emotionally, mentally, so that I can be prepared for this, so that when I go into parenthood, I'm not just I'm learning, but I'm not necessarily like having to like grow completely, like, you know, level up in a completely different way. Like I'm already kind of on that path and the growing pains maybe aren't as painful because I took the time to deal with it before I brought somebody else into the picture.
And you said this year felt like the right year, and I'm guessing that stems from you developing into the person you are now. And what did that look like for you as far as getting to this point? How do you deal with the hard days? What's your mentality each day?
I take each day as a completely new day. This year felt right for me, really just because I felt at peace with a lot of things. My biggest thing I say in the morning is like, I want to live each day that if today's my last day and I go up there and to whoever is in charge up there is like, how do you think you spent the last 28 years? I can honestly be like, I think I did all right. Like I don't really have any unfinished business here. I feel good about it. And I think what comes into that also is the days I wake up and I'm like, okay, this might be your last day. If I'm not feeling it, I allow myself to not feel it, you know, because sometimes I think trucking through things isn't the best scenario. Like it isn't the best thing for your heart and for your mind. I think some days you just got to kind of sit in it and process it because it's a lesson.
I almost think that's a new message we've been hearing lately, because especially being our age, we're always taught to be go-getters and be fast and be tough and be first. But sometimes I do think we just start rushing, that we lose purpose of what we're even doing in the first place, why we even want it, if we're even happy. And I actually did a little experiment where I went and interviewed people and said, what makes you happy? And it was crazy how I kind of proved myself right, where I was like, I bet it's going to take people a second to really think about it. But when you step back, isn't happiness the goal of life in general? Like, isn't that what we all say we would strive to feel? And the fact that a question that should be the basis of existence takes us like a moment to really even think about. And I think it is because we're so caught up. And it's not to be confused with laziness if you're not constantly grinding every day, but self-love is a real thing. Like you have to check in on how you're feeling, because before you know it, you'll look in the mirror and 10 years have passed and you have no idea who you are. You don't know what you want. And I think that's when that downward spiral is so easy, because you just suddenly have no idea how you got that far. So I think it's so great that you are already doing this self-work, and then you can pass that on to a child, because I know you, and I know that you're going to change this person's life. And it's going to be like, what a better way to grow than to help someone else grow. It's got to be such a rewarding feeling. But have you gone through in your mind, like, what am I going to do if they have behavior problems? Like, are you going to be like a tough mom? I feel like you're a tough love kind of girl.
I've honestly had like so many mini panic attacks, as far as like, not real well, I mean, they're real panic attacks, but like not extreme enough to where I'm backing out. But I'm like, I hope that I handle these situations correctly. And what I've come to realize is just, I'm gonna mess up at some point, you know? Like, I adore my mom. I think she's one of the best, but she messed up a lot, and I turned out okay. And I'm going into the mindset that I'm gonna mess up a lot, and I can't be too hard on myself, because as long as I continue to just make love the main thing in my relationship with this child or with these children, then I think we're gonna be okay. But I haven't decided. I'm a big communicator, I know that. So even with like my nephew and my goddaughter, whenever like I'm watching them and they do something not supposed to, I'm big into, why did you do that? Well, what made you feel like you needed to do that? Let's talk about how we can do better. I mean, granted, my nephew's like 2, so he's like not giving me like full answers, but I think like implementing those, that thinking process of like, why did I do this? And
I love that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to go with.
I'm thinking now that typically when you see a young child do something wrong, the adult's immediate response is just to be like, no, that's not what we do, but to really take it from the very top and have them question themselves internally of, why did you do that? That can really like get to the root of the issue. And I think that's brilliant that you've been thinking that way. Is that how your mom raised you, and to make you look within before kind of reacting?
No, no, my mother is a very classic Southern mother, so that was not how things were handled. But because we adopted, one of the requirements in Kentucky to adopt is that not only the children who were adopted do therapy, but any child in the house does therapy. And so I was really fortunate in the fact that I had access to therapy from a really young age, and learned really healthy, coping mechanisms, and really healthy understandings of why I choose to do certain things. Like I'm that friend who will tell you I'm doing something stupid and then walk you through why I'm doing it, and tell you how I'm going to end it and why I haven't ended it yet. Like you don't even have to tell me, because I know.
Yeah, I do that too. I find myself in therapy answering a lot of my own questions, but sometimes it's just like you live through experience, and even if you know it's going to hurt, sometimes you have to get the cut to let it heal. Like you're not going to be over it. It's almost like that little fix you got to get. So we know that we're teaching ourselves the harder lessons, but it's that heart and logic, and sometimes your heart just is a little bit louder than your brain. And I think being aware that you're doing that is a big thing. But so what age did you start therapy?
My siblings, we started fostering them when I was 10. So yeah, I've been doing therapy since I was 10, and I'm 28 now.
As a 10-year-old, I don't think I would be super open to therapy. Were you excited about it, or was there a part of you that was like, I'm not going to talk to this stranger?
My friends and my family always makes fun of me because I'm such a hard on my sleeve type of person. I'm very emotional. I always want people to understand me. And so so I didn't really have an issue with it. It definitely, I will say, like, as years went by and we got different therapists, I was able to warm up to them more, because I believe our first therapist was through our school. And her name was Dr. Biles. Shout out to Dr. Biles. And I had an easy time with her just because she was someone who like did the work, as far as like she was my therapist, but she would like go to my basketball games, and like I would see her around because she was the in-school therapist. So I would see her around, and it made it more comfortable to talk to her. But then like when we moved, we had this therapist who was like this old white guy, and he was cool, but I wasn't really as ready to open up to him because he just wasn't someone I felt like could relate to me. But now my therapist is like an older single Black woman with children who, is faith-based and everything. And so like we're very similar on a lot of things to where I feel very comfortable because I feel like she understands me and she doesn't like,
totally get
like
that.
we have that connection that's kind of like unspoken.
Yeah. And you find that therapy has really helped you, like you definitely would recommend to other people.
Oh, absolutely. I wish everyone, like, whether you think you need it or not, I wish everyone would do therapy because I think there's just so much to learn
I
from it.
cannot agree with that more. That's kind of why I wanted to even do this show, because I think a lot of times people just think it's only them when we're having panic attacks or bad days. We don't want to talk about it because we're like, oh my God, like, why am I feeling this way? I should be so fortunate and I should be so happy, but I'm not. And I think that's when that steady decline just starts to happen because we just think we're alone. But just knowing that now when I have bad days, just telling myself that, just like you said, sit with those feelings, know that a lot of other people, especially this year, are feeling it, to just allow it to happen. It's not giving yourself a pity party, but it's saying, okay, let's sit with this, let's recognize what it is, then let's move on, but let's not race through it and pretend like it isn't happening, because then, as we all know, that's when we get the explosions and then we stub our toe and we start crying and we have no idea why we're overreacting. But what do you do when you have a bad day? What are ways that you can calm yourself down?
Oh man. It's so, I feel so goofy saying this, but I absolutely love TikTok. I think it's so stupid, but it's just something that I can mindlessly do that kind of like naturally puts endorphins back in me. Like I can just sit there and just watch them and feel so dumb. I pray. For people who aren't religious, because I haven't always been like a spiritual person in that sense. I meditated prior to finding a new relationship with God. So just like kind of sitting in it, thinking about it, putting your problems out into the universe, whether that's to a higher being or just simply like just putting it out there, has helped me a lot. And I like to do things that make me happy on days, even if like I'm not happy in the moment. I like to just practice doing something that makes me happy. So today I wasn't having the best day this morning because I was just really overwhelmed. And so I was like, I'm going to do my makeup. And then I took it off and then I did it again and then I took it off. And then I watched like crappy horror films for like 4 hours. And like,
I love that.
yeah, and that it was so small and stupid, but like to me that was just kind of a place of like, okay, like it's a completely wasted, not a wasted day, but it was a day I kind of had to stop and just sit in it, but it was nice because now I feel like tomorrow I can bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense because you are a very passionate person. And so I think these outlets that are just really goofy, silly, or if it's makeup, it's just fun and you get to be pretty and play with looks, that makes a lot of sense that you want something that's so opposite of every single day, especially this year, that requires us to just like feel such a weight and heaviness that anything that's just like, that's Real Housewives for me, like I, for some reason, haven't
Yes.
jumped on the TikTok train quite as hard. But yeah, I think just finding any fun outlet, as long as it's not hurting someone else or yourself, then who cares what your outlet is? If you, that's, I think, some of the hardest times are just not allowing ourselves to have a little like movie binge if we want to. And I'm glad you give yourself that time. And what would you recommend as far as any podcasts or books? What do you listen to that makes you feel just happy?
I know for me, I really like reading other people's stories because I think sometimes it's hard to remember that like other people, it's hard to remember that you're not the only one who's been on a journey that's hard, because I've been through a lot of things that I know a lot of people maybe wouldn't bounce back from. And so to read stories of other people who went through things that you didn't like, that you're reading and you're like, I can't believe that they went through this. It makes me feel better because I know that anytime I feel like I can't do it, it's possible because these people went through this and it's possible. So I love reading like celebrity memoirs, but not like any celebrity, like people I love Trevor Noah's memoir that he wrote about being born like in apartheid, and how, his existence was like illegal in South Africa for the first like 13 years of his life, and just like reading how he overcame that and everything to be Trevor Noah of the Daily Show that we know and love today. And just hearing like, and just reading like his his sense of humor and everything about it, and him being able to look back on it and laugh. I love Mindy Kaling. I love Issa Rae. And Amber, or why am I blanking on her name? What's Wiz Khalifa's baby mama?
Amber Rose.
Amber Rose. I kept wanting to say Amber Riley, and I'm like, no, that's a singer. It's not. Amber Rose has a book called How to Be a Bad Bitch. And I never in a million years thought that like one of my favorite self-help books would be from Amber Rose, but it is my all-time favorite self-help book. It is really done a number for how I view myself and how I present myself to the world and how I bounce back from my off days. So if there's any book I could recommend, it would be Amber Rose's How to Be a Bad Bitch.
Okay, I'm going to add that to the list. Especially, I really, really love when people assume something of someone, not to say you prejudge or anything, but I think a lot of people might have that opinion where they wouldn't expect Amber Rose would be the self-help book that they would turn to. That's what's so cool about people these days. It's that we can look any way we want. We can have a million tattoos. We can do, that doesn't define who we are at all and what's going on in our brains. And I think that people really need to take notes and just stop judging each other, because it's just, we're all just killing each other really, and it's really sad to see what people are doing. But just one last thing I want to touch on is you have a great group of friends around you, and I know that's strategic. I know you choose people to be in your circle that you trust. And how important is it for you that you're constantly surrounded by people that inspire you and want to support you?
I think when I decided I was ready to be a mom, that's really when I focused in on who I had in my circle, because yes, like, you know, family can be blood, but family is also who you choose family to be. And my family is across the country. So who's in my kid's life really is my group of friends. And so I had to not only think who's going to feed my soul, but who's going to feed my kid. Especially if, God forbid, anything ever happened to me, it's going to be the people in my life who continue on like what I want this kid to know. So it's super important to have people who are going to root for you. It's super important to have people who are going to root for you even when they aren't doing well. Yeah. And that was one of the biggest lessons I've learned moving out here into LA. I would watch how people would react when I was succeeding and they weren't, because I'm someone who's, no matter what is going on with me, I want to see my people win. Because if you're winning, I'm winning.
Right.
In my mind.
Caring about someone.
Yeah, and I learned that that's not how everyone thinks. And so for me, the people in my life now, you know, the Stephs, the Nakia Monets, like, it was very important for me to find people who wanted to see me win, wanted to win themselves, and wanted us to win together, and weren't afraid to communicate when they weren't at their best, and weren't afraid to call me out when they knew I wasn't living up to my potential.
I love that you said that, because I think a real friend is someone that's going to be honest with you, not necessarily like so blunt and mean, but someone that you're asking their opinion, or even if you're not asking, someone that just sees you and knows that you can be this person. I know what's in you, so I'm going to share my truth with you. That's what a real friend is. And I love that I have those people in my life too, where I know that the reasons I keep them in my life are because they're honest, genuine people. And that goes a long way, hopefully, like relationships that will last a lifetime. But I think it really shows that you're on to great things, and I'm really excited for you. And you just also, one last thing, you reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. It's that character is who you are when no one's watching. And that one I think is so true. It's like, who are you when you don't have anyone to praise you or anyone to help you? You know what I mean? It's just, who are you at the core of the decisions you make? And it sounds like you're definitely a true, real character. And I'm so excited for you.
Thanks, girl. Thank you so much for having me on this. I think it's great what you're doing.
Thank you. I feel like we can talk forever, but I will let you go, and I'll see you soon.
Yes, you will.
Love you. Thank you.
Love you.
Bye.